I've been a volunteer here, or docent as we're known, for about 9 years. And the park is rich in both natural history and, of course, cultural history. And one of the biggest reasons why we do this hike is because at one time this was a movie ranch, not a cattle ranch as some people have said. And it was owned by 20th Century Fox from 1946 until 1974. And then they sold it to the state of California, and 2 years later it opened up as Malibu Creek State Park. And the park still welcomes filming. They just have to get a permit, and so every once in a while, if you're here, you might get lucky. A new show was filming part of, I guess, its initial season as a premiere. It's going to premiere next month, called Terminal List with Chris Pratt. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. Maybe him, of course. So I have to catch some of that film, and Chris Pratt wasn't there, but. Anyway, but it dates back even further to almost the beginning of motion pictures. Do you know where motion pictures in America first started? No?
No.
Who invented the light bulb? Right. Well, Edison had made a lot of money once he invented that light bulb. He essentially illuminated all of New York City. In fact, when he invented the light bulb and they wanted to illuminate New York City, it was realized that he had no generating system, so they had to develop that as well. Anyway, with that money, he started expanding his research, and that led him to movies, which already been starting in Europe, but he had the money, and he was really the one that got it going here in a large way. And then there was other studios popping up around the East Coast, most famously in Fort Lee, New Jersey. But then, you have winter back there, and they wanted to, be able to film a little bit more, around the year. So some of these early filmmakers found their way out west here and started establishing studios. Paramount Studios was one of the first ones to have a movie ranch in the Santa Monica Mountains, and there's still a remaining portion of it that's under the National Park Service. But let's go back to the earlier years of the population of modern civilization here. So after Native American period of history, and then there was Spanish, and then there was Mexican, and then people from the Pacific and the East Coast were coming out here. And so in the early 1900s, 1909, I believe, was the beginning, a group of men from Los Angeles who were kind of captains of business, lawyers, bankers, real estate people, doing quite well, and I'm sure the pressures of that business, the urban life, and a number of them liked the outdoors, and so they, a few of them got together. Take a pause. So a few gentlemen, they got together and they wanted to find a hunting and fishing preserve that they could purchase and open up a membership to their contemporaries. And so that's what they did. They started to cobble together land here from different owners, and there was some 2,000 acres. And that really set the footprint of the size of the land that would just move on to the different ownership over the years. So, of course, their business and interest here was just recreation. They built this beautiful lodge up on a hilltop that, if we're doing okay heat-wise, we might go up to see where it was, because there's some film history there. And so they were here from 1909 until the later 30s. By then, their numbers were dwindling off, and there was really nobody coming back in. But in 1919, that's the earliest that we've found so far, not to say there's something before that, that filming was already here and on the Crags Country Club, as it was known, property. They both movies were starring major movie celebrities of the day. Mary Pickford in a movie called Daddy Longlegs, and she made an appearance. The scene was shot down at the famous and infamous rock pool. And then William S. Hart, who was kind of like the John Wayne or the Clint Eastwood, you know, Western movie star of his time in the silent era, and he made a movie out here called Breed of Men. So that was kind of, you know, as early as we've gotten. And then as the 20s unfolded, other productions were out here. Now, I'm not sure if you know about the history of 20th Century Fox, but they started off as Fox Corporation. That's the first use of the word Fox. And then they eventually merged with 20th Century, another production company, and became 20th Century Fox. So they were already out here as Fox. Another early one was Tom Mix, who was kind of like stepped in and got more popularity than William S. Hart and kind of took over that role. He was a bit more colorful, wore colorful costumes and Western wear, and William S. Hart kind of slid down the, you know, the popularity scale there. And you know, then as the 30s rolled around, more and more, and you know, then it was just the place to go. And 20th Century Fox bought it, as I say, in 1946. So what we're going to do to get started here is I'm going to show you some photos. We have these large laminated photos I had done. We'll do it here, and because there's history right where we are. And then we'll just take a short walk. Since it's a small group, we might go on that path over there just to stay out of traffic in the parking lot. So I can get a good look at that hill over there with some history as well. So with a small group, you're free to just, you know, chime in if you have a question to ask. Don't worry. You don't need to raise your hand, but you know, if you wanted to, that's okay. All right. You ready to go to the movies?
I have a question. So you mentioned Crags Country Club?
Yeah,
so
I just
did. Was it just sort of a wilderness club? Or? Oh,
no. As I say, it was a group of wealthy businessmen. Yeah. And it was really, this was the times, it was men only, although you could bring your spouses out. They eventually, I think, there was one woman who was like the pioneer force behind the Children's Hospital that still exists today. Don't recall her name. I mean, there are a lot of members and all. So yeah, as I say, they were in numbers. They were here in the late 30s, and then their numbers started to dwindle off. It seems like nobody was coming in behind them, and at that point, there's largely just a caretaker of the land, and that was up until 1946. We're going to stop. We're going to end our tour at the Visitor Center, which was a getaway weekend vacation home for one of the members. 3 members had homes here. This family was Hunt, and then there was Mott, which is down what's known as Mott Road, and then there was one as you go up the hill towards Century Lake and the MASH site there, the Garland House. So those 3, and then the Country Club Lodge, if you will, and its outbuildings. Those were the only real structures for their activities. But they hunted and fished here, you know, and that's a lot of what they wanted to do. And the clubhouse was like that kind of a clubhouse where there was all rooms on the second floor, and on the main floor, the big dining hall, the library, a sitting room, and you know, and just beautiful views. You'll see that if we walk up there.
Where was Crags Lodge?
Well, we'll go by there, yeah, on the way over. So okay, let's start with the show and tell here. I'm going to give you these reading just so you'll have them. So again, it's the, you know, you have to double click that one to get the back open. Oh, I mentioned too, for those of you who don't know the outdoors calendar of events, this is one of the best resources to find about what anything is going on in parks. They're, you know, kind of group activities, if you will, and you just go to this website here. The more modern version you scan that, but in small print there, the same website is there. So feel free to grab them. Okay. So before this was a parking lot. In fact, the main entrance to the Fox Ranch, movie ranch here, if you go to the far corner of the parking lot over there, you'll see a yellow gate and you walk around, and then you see a shaded walk there. It's still paved, and that was the original entrance. And if you kept going on it straight ahead, you'd hit Las Virgenes Road there. So that was the original entrance. When the state took over the land, that was a bit unsafe. So they built this one up over here and closed that one. That was known as Waycross Road there. So Fox, in the early 1960s, they sold off their huge back lot. It was one of the most impressive back lots of many different sets, whether it's a, New York City street, a Western street, an urban street, a ranch, or some European set, whatever. And so they sold that off, and they, of course, started to bring more out here. But the only really things they brought out here is they brought out some trains and tracks, which would have been, I'll point out where that was. But also right here, they reconstructed what they lost on that back lot. That often the term that's been used a lot here is sky pool, but that's not the technical name of it. And that was it, right here in this parking lot.
Oh my gosh.
So you see that grassy hillside over there. Let me step over this way a little bit if I may. Let me know if I have a rattlesnake behind me. Ed, would you come over here and hold this for me? I'll keep them this way.
Going to be your banner one?
Okay, so we're looking in that direction back in the 1950s, and that was a permanent kind of farm ranch set that the studio built. It was used in a handful of movies, and it actually stood in you can't see it because of the trees, but there's a little rise up, and then there's a flat field there. It's all full of mustard right now, but that's where this was, because you can see that hillside off in the distance there. So probably the biggest celebrity that filmed over here at that farmhouse, although Cary Grant did a movie, but you didn't see as much of the outdoors, I don't think, widespread. So anybody know who this is? Girls, do you know who he is? He was the early Michael Jackson, or whoever the big male pop star is of today. Elvis Presley!
The original king.
The original king.
Yeah, right. And this was his very first motion picture called Love Me Tender. And it had a post-Civil War setting. He was the one youngest brother of 4, and his 3 older brothers had gone off to fight. They were from the South. They were in the Confederate side of the Civil War. And he had stayed home. I don't know if they said why he was home. Maybe he was just too young. But anyway, and so the brothers come back, and that's when the very first scene. This is when you see Elvis. That is the shot. When he first appears on screen. Love Me Tender. He was caretaking for the farm, looking after their mother. And then look in another direction. Let me move over here. My mic is over here. I'll look over my shoulder. Well, who are the 2 most famous musical dance stars in early Hollywood? Yeah, but I'm excuse. I should have just clarified who are the 2 top male musical stars or dance talents. So Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, right. So at the kind of the close of Fred Astaire's career as a leading man, he made a movie in 1968 called Finian's Rainbow, and he was Finian. He was Irish. He found the pot of gold, and that's how the story was set from there. And it was a musical, and it starred a very popular female singer of the day, Petula Clark. downtown. Those early years of motion pictures and studios, that they would get their stories from popular novels that had come out. Gone with the Wind, written by Margaret Mitchell. How Green Is My Valley, written by Richard Llewellyn. And the settings were, of course, in different locations around the world or somewhere in the United States. Gone with the Wind was Georgia, largely, the South. How Green Is My Valley, anybody ever heard the movie? Okay, do you know where the setting was? Where were they? It was Wales in the UK.
It was a Western.
It was Wales. No, it was about the people of Wales.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. And it went on to win 8 Academy Awards. And Daryl Zanuck, the head of the studio, was the one who came up with the idea, because he had seen, like anybody in America, Gone with the Wind, and so he wanted to make his own Gone with the Wind type of story, but with a completely different setting and story, if you will. They eventually had John Ford, one of the most famous directors, helm it, and it was shot in the summer of 1941. So up on that hillside there, kind of going from right to left or left to right, can you see where where there's sort of like a cut line in a way of where I don't know, for me it's easy to pick it out, but where that clump of trees is the thickest, and then on the other side there's actually an old dirt road that you can walk up. We're not going up it today. And that's where they built this Welsh mining village.
What a transformation.
And the story behind it is just fascinating, especially for me who loves, research, history, whether it's movies or anything else. So when Zanuck at first got this idea, he wanted to go to Wales or the UK and film it, but that quickly died because World War I was looming. This was before Pearl Harbor, not many months before. It was filmed, I say, in the summer of 41, and Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 41.
World War II.
World War II, excuse me. Oh, did I say World War I? Yeah, my mistake. But anyway, so they had been here before. I don't know exactly what drew them here. Maybe it was because they had the experience of coming here. But anyway, this is where they chose to come. They had an art director whose job was to design this set, do drawings, and then it would go on from there to the other people who would make it happen. And so it was built in a curving fashion along the dirt road, and it's still essentially there. That's from back then. And up at the very top was the mine, or what was known as the colliery. That was their term over in the UK. And
is that where that green cylinder is right now?
Well, that's a water tank that we don't know for sure if it was predated or came after the movie, but I'm known from reading lots of things, biographies about people who were part of the movie that they needed rain for it was British Isles, and so that possibly is a reason that was put there. But you don't see that in the movie at all. If it was here at the time, it would have been up behind here somewhere. But they denuded the hillside there. They cleared all the grass and whatever was there because they recreated slag. Does everybody know what slag is? And that's like the waste product of coal mining. And so they just brought in all. So about a couple of years later, the town was still there. It stayed up until at least the later 50s. And John Steinbeck, another well-known writer of that era, he'd written a book called The Moon is Down, and the setting was in Scandinavian countries, Norway, I believe. And it was during World War II, and the Germans had come, as they're expanding their empire, if you will, they had come into those countries and they were taking over the towns and all, and so the story is about that. Well, I don't know, I'd have to look, I should look into when they shot this if I can find it, but it was evidently the winter.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing? All fake snow, I'm sure. The only thing, I don't think they, showed cold air coming out of their mouth when they're talking. So that's The Moon is Down on that same hillside, and they just redressed the houses, from Wales to more of the Scandinavian design of homes there. And it was about the people rising up against the Germans, just like in How Green Was My Valley. Okay, so let's go back. I want to put my pack. We're going to, because we're a smaller group, and this is where I'll need the help of my volunteer docents, is that we're going to walk down over to the road there, and we'll cross over, and we'll walk along the side there, but I'm going to have a docent watching the traffic and make sure they slow down and all. We're just going to walk a short distance up there a little bit, because one of the most famous movies that's shot here had scenes just up there. And then we'll come back, and we'll go down the paved road into the heart of the park, and we'll go to the rock pool, and hopefully won't find too many people there. It's very popular in the warm weather. Okay, you can stay on the path over there if you want. Shame that the field's not mowed. I'd love to walk out a little further, but we're not going there. So, getting back to landmarks, natural features, and how important they are for a then and now experience. I don't want to walk anymore on the road, although I guess we could walk up on that path a little bit. Yeah, let's do that. So if you can come out here in front of me a little bit, let me know if you see a rattlesnake come up behind me. I had to buy a bigger pack so I could carry these. All right. So I was reminded as I'm walking along here, typical of what you see this time of the year when things dry out. And one of the primary rationales that the cinematographer used with his consistency or suggestion of black and white is that Mr. Zanuck, in kind of a humorous way, said if we were to do this in Technicolor, shooting in the summer, you'd really have to change the title to How Brown Was My Valley. But in black and white, it doesn't really matter that much. So other studios shot here as well as Fox, and this was common, as well as the private movie ranches that existed around Southern California, and some still do. So this is from 1938, before Fox came here, and it was called Blockade, and it was set in Spain during the Spanish, it was around that time, I think, that there was a Spanish Revolution, whatever. So this, you just, wait a minute. Anyway, this is over in that direction somewhere, but this was filmed more up that way. There's a beach named after this man. You really can't see him clear enough. He had been an actor back in the early, I don't know if he started in silence, but he was certainly through early sound films, and then he got into TV. Western, his most famous character was Pancho in the Cisco Kid in the 1950s. And although he was not the leading man, Duncan Ronaldo playing the Cisco Kid, he became much more well known in California. He eventually he loved the land. He was very proud of his heritage, and he became a state park commissioner in California. Those who don't know this, it's not one park commissioner, it's many, I guess, for different districts of California. So they named a beach in honor of him, and that is Rio Carrillo State Park and Beach. So that's him there playing a flute, tending to his herd of sheep, his flock of sheep, I should say. shot also up in that direction there would have been this movie, World War II, simply looking right over there. You can see and match up in the back. So she's there with, you barely see him, that's the Irish actor Barry Fitzgerald, and it was his vineyard. And her co-star was Ray Malone, and the rancher had his ranch, Mediterranean Spanish design. It was over actually where the MASH site is today. So they planted a vineyard out here. And just chronologically here,
They didn't have a water shortage.
well, I don't know, but I've read from our old newsletters that go back to the late 70s that we would host fishing derbies in the creek, and actually the state would stock the lake, and I don't know if they were stocking the creek with trout, but that's long gone. It's never my time here. So if you were to, I mean, technically only campers are allowed to drive up here to the campsites. But if you were to go up there and then you're put onto a loop that goes around to the right and you circle around, you come back this one way. As you're coming back around, you'll see a stockade fence or plank fence, and behind it is this house. And it's state park headquarters that they inherited. When Fox was here, they didn't own this land up over here. It was owned by a family named Hunter, so it's Hunter Ranch. And so they would make some money off of filming out here. And so in 1947, 48, it was Mr. Blandings built his dream house. So the building's still there, but the exterior is not the same. It's the shape and all, but it's more of a thin application of an adobe-like substance, and then the shutters are going off of it. But that's Mr. Blandings builds his dream house.
Is that the building over there?
You can't see it. No, that's a restroom.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, you can't see it from here.
Is that the admin building?
Yeah, Cary Grant and Myrna Loy. It's kind of a comedy. The setting is Connecticut. Mr. Blandings, he works in the city. I think it was advertising was his profession, and like the Christ Country Club people, you know, he probably wanted to move out of the city and get into the country.
That's Cary Grant, and that's.
Yeah, it's Cary Grant and Myrna Loy, and then these two girls played their daughters.
Mike, you just mentioned a lake. What lake are you talking about?
Well, there was Century Lake. Well, first it was Craig's Lake. They also, in fact, I should have mentioned that about the water, the rain, although this is downstream from where the bridge I referred to is. But the Craig's Country Club, they impounded the creek up that way and built a dam.
Okay.
And that was called Craig's Lake. When Fox came here, they renamed it Century Lake. So it's still up there. It's shrunk a bit, but it's still there. Now to that really most famous movie of the kind of cinematic history here. Not TV show, but I know any of these guys? Right. They did a reboot in more, recent years. I don't know if you ever seen a Planet of the Apes. Who was it? Was it Mark Wahlberg that was in it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim Burton, did he do that first one? Yeah, say it like that. So this is the original, 1968. And there were 4 sequels after that. And it's not in order, but it started with Planet of the Apes, and then, the other 4 were various names. Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Return to the Planet of the Apes. And which the order is, I'm not really sure ever. I haven't got that burned into my mind. So the astronauts are traveling through time in their spaceship, and they have some kind of a suspended animation, sleeping for decade after decade kind of thing. And we're going to show the movie here in our amphitheater on July 30th. And but anyway, long story short is when they crash land, they land in what's now Lake Mead. And I think it was there back then, of course, but it's a part of Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, which I think spans Nevada and Arizona. So it's in the National Park Service. The dam is run by the Army Corps of Engineers. So they splash down there and they walk through the desert, which is Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, which is just really lots of sandstone-shaped rocks of smoothness and ruggedness, and then they appear in the park, which are one of our last stops is the rock pool, and that's where they find water to go swimming after that trek across the desert. And while they're skinny dipping like a lobotomy on them. Let's study these creatures. They're different from the others. They talk. They're a threat to our society. Okay, I think that's it for here. So it takes me. This is the only part that I don't like is getting this water district recycled water. And they have like a headquarters location just up the road toward the freeway. Otherwise, we would have this here year-round. We'll tell you that our park rules for safety is that there's no diving here, but people ignore it. And the rock pool is even worse because people get injured diving off of high rocks. I mean, we had a man drowned about 3 years ago there. When you're young, you just don't always. All I really wanted to point out here is if you wanted to go up the How Green Is My Valley old dirt road path that's right there, goes on up. But the Grasslands Trail, as it's known, it keeps on going, and it would eventually kind of rides the tops of the grassy hillsides, and it'll eventually take you over to Mulholland, and then even go a little bit further after you cross Mulholland there. So you can get just a $2 map that's very good at the entrance station, no tax, $2. And then when we're formally open in the visitor center, but we're not going to be open, I understand, today because we don't have the docents to staff it. But we're going in because we've got the key.
Private.
Right.
Showing.
Yeah, private showing there, so you'll have the place to yourself. It's not going to be all set up, but at least you'll get a peek, and I wanted to see that video, so that's the important part. So now we're going to walk into really, essentially, a big part of the heart of Malibu Creek State Park. Sadly, it wasn't that long ago that the creek completely dried up pretty much. It was just as beautiful when it still has water in it. Lots of water birds, ducks, egrets, great blue herons, which, the great blue herons and the egrets are still around, as Carrie just saw one, big, beautiful, pure white bird, the egret. But all those ducks, they just kind of disappear and look for another body of water somewhere else. But that's the reality of where we are today, and with climate changes and worsening throughout the country, of course. So we're just going to walk down this road. It's known as the High Road. Eventually, it gets to a fork, and if we were to go uphill, it's then Crags Road, and it would take us up to that seasonal bridge and cross it and onto the MASH site. I might do a MASH site all on its own in the cooler weather. So, okay, let's go look for that next shady spot.
There will be some.
Well, I really missed, I didn't catch this one here. I should have pulled out, because when we were at that field there where we first walked on the beginning of that little trail, kind of tucked in there somewhere, was this set structure from Dr. Doolittle, 1967.
Oh, wow.
I know there was a later one made. Is that Eddie Murphy?
Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. So it's a English estate there, and Dr. Doolittle's, but they also filmed over somewhere in the United Kingdom. But they had scenes out here, and what was great is they had access to more trained, supposedly wild animals. if you had never heard of it, there was a place called Jungle Land that was in Thousand Oaks, kind of where the Civic Center is today, in that theater and all, and through there somewhere. And they had all manner of wild animals, but they also took them in, you know, for productions to care for them. And so they got a giraffe from there that Rex Harrison rode, a rhinoceros they got. You know, they might have gotten that somewhere else, I don't know by species what animals they had at Jungle Land. But all the animals were fairly trained to allow them to do that. I mean, it was gutsy to get on the back of a rhinoceros. But you know, you see it. I haven't seen the movie. It just didn't really draw my interest enough when I tried it the first and only time.
That was Rex Harrison.
Yeah, 1967, British actor. What's interesting is what you see in the background over the hills there. Do you recognize anything? What?
The
The screen? Yeah, right. Yeah, because it was taken from like on a slope up there, looking down on it. So you see the sky backing there, of course, and then there's this. It was over in the parking lot area as well. It was a fake mountain built that was in a movie with Frank Sinatra called Von Ryan's Express, and there's a scene there where they. You know, you see both a real one, then you're here from a distance, because I think there's an explosion in the scene where it's a miniature. By the way, a train going through a tunnel cutting the mountain there. So that's what that was all about. Come back a little bit so we give people plenty of room to walk there. And then up over here, that's actually How Green's My Valley Hill. This is 67, that Welsh village was taken down, and they had these metal, like Quonset huts, if you will, for an army comedy movie called Wake Me When It's Over. So that's what that is. But yeah, that was right back there. Ed, could you maybe hold that? Oh, I love that breeze.
That's Jim.
Yeah. Try to do most of this right here because it's a pretty good spot with the shade. I think this is the last one, is it? Yep.
Used to be a bench at that next tree over there.
Huh?
There used to be a bench at that next tree over there.
Oh, was it? I don't even
Took
remember
it out
that.
after the Mosley fire.
Let me see. Oh yeah, you got the one I already showed. That's right. So in 1966, a movie was made called The Sand Pebbles with one of my favorite actors, Steve McQueen. A cool guy, a bit of a loner, didn't get into the whole Hollywood crowd kind of thing, but he was kind of a man's man, motorcycle racer, and loved motorcycles and all. And he did, you know, a lot of movies that had lots of action in them. They filmed a lot of this over in, I don't know, it was either Singapore or Hong Kong, but it was about the early Civil War in China back in the earlier 1900s. I can't throw out the decade offhand. So a lot of it was filmed there, and they were Navy men on a ship, and they were in there to protect, you know, whatever Americans or whoever was there, and so they were dealing with the Chinese army and all. Come on, make sure that people got room behind you there to walk. But they did do one significant bit of filming here, and it's hard to see, but we've got a tree blocks it. But if you just look up and you see how the grass kind of slopes up a little bit right there. So they had built a platform of dirt, and so bulldozers were in there likely, you know, shaping it all up. And so if you were there, or when you're up there above, I think it's really best seen in the spring. Because what happens is that you can see the footprint outline of that rectangle up there. So this is one of the better shots. We haven't got like the holy grail shots, as a friend of mine would say, but that's the China Light mission that they built here for the movie. Again, this is the Sand Pebbles, 1966. I've got that right. And it's more or less toward the end of the movie, and there's a big, huge courtyard there, and that's a lot of where the scene took place. It was in the courtyard and all. That was right up there. And then at one time, this road went that way, and then there was another road that kind of went out that way. And they built this village of adobe stucco homes, depending on where the movie setting was. Sometimes the roofs were thatched grass, other times they were Spanish tiles, if you will. So one of my favorite movies is Love is a Many Splendid Tree, right there. And then using the same village also for China was a movie called The Left Hand of God. Humphrey Bogart, who was a very big star with Warner Brothers, and he was portraying falsely a priest, the father of a mission that he ran into. He had been shot down in World War II, and he stayed there, an evasive person because he was dealing with Chinese and all, and then he got kind of caught up with some warlord and didn't like him and broke away again. And so he's kind of on the run as a loner, and he came upon this priest who was on his way to the mission to take over, but he was dying, and Humphrey Bogart was there to care for him for a short period of time, and said, "Oh, I have a disguise." So he put on the priest's, clothing and showed up, and they thought he was a real deal, but it was a place to hide out. So you'll see a film clip of this in the video. He's a priest, but he still shows his tough guy image there. So one of the famous TV shows of the 50s and the 60s that shot out here in the early years was The Rifleman. And that's Chuck Connors. The star is Lucas McCain. I know I need to print up more of these laminated photos because there's so much more to show you. The actor who played his son, Johnny Crawford, he's recently passed away, but Brian made contact with him at a presentation. He was just there to visit, and so Brian got his okay for him to come out here dressed in a Western outfit and hold a photo of him and Chuck Connors together with the Goat Buttes in the background. And so he's sitting there holding this, and it was like a beautiful opportunity. And he did that also recently with Linda Harrison, which is pretty much the last remaining member of the main cast of Planet of the Apes. So she was one of these subhumans, I always call them, and she kind of, hung around with Charlton Heston, kind of in a boyfriend-girlfriend thing, and he was, protecting her. But he had her out here too. So they had a ranch set that just out in that field, a little bit more to the left there, which we could probably grab in the other shade there. But you just see how the landscape, the grasslands are dotted with these oaks here, just like it is today, lower growth ones. I think that's it there. Okay. Thank you, Edward. Eduardo. Oh yeah.
After it rains a lot, does this kind of fill up a little bit?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. As I say, well, it has the benefit of not one but two lakes with dams. So you have Malibu Lake just outside the park's western boundary, literally touching it. And then you have Craig's Century Lake here within the park. So they both over the dam, and the volume really picks up in speed, and even brings some fish over the dam. And so there's a short season of fishing here in the creek.
So historically it has flooded so much that we'd be underwater standing right here.
Is that right? Wow.
So this is like the view of the Goat Buttes. This is the best you'll get up there. And if there's water in the creek, this would be a beautiful photo, even more so. But those are the famous, beautiful Goat Buttes. And it's just a story. It's not like written in fact that I've been told about. But the Goat Buttes name is said to be because the Crags Country Club, like some smart people, they'll have sheep or goats grazing like lawnmowers. and they were grazing even up there on the hillside. So it sounds like a plausible tale. But since we're not going out there, I'll just point out a little for any future visits and cooler weather. Perhaps we encourage you to come back. But you can go around to where we're going to come to the fork and go more or less to the left. But when you cross the bridge onto the other side there, you'll see the visitor center that we'll see to the right. But if you turn left, you'd be able to walk along a dirt road all the way at the base of that slope over there. And it curves around and then starts to go more southerly, cutting through the kind of ravines there, and that's called Mott Road. Then it dead ends at private property, but you'll still see some of the remains of Mott adobe down there. I don't know if this chimney is still standing, the stone one down there, but that's you'll see that. I think there was a picnic table down there at one time. I don't know, has anybody been that way of late? No, it's been a while since I was down there. So this flat plain out here was perfect for filmmaking, and one of the key factors that a studio would be looking for when they go out to look for a movie ranch, if you will, invest in, is to be able to have a valley where you're surrounded by hills that block off any other modern day structures. So you've got it right here. I mean, all the way around this beautiful valley. How brown was my valley? And this flat plain had a variety of sets on it, mostly like ranch sets. There was one down somewhere along close to this side here. It was shown in some movies. There was another ranch set up a little bit further, I'll point out when we get up there. And so those were the go-to ranches for any movies that needed a ranch, a homestead, whatever you will. Okay. Cathedral-like. So scenes from various movies or film, TV shows would use this as very appealing. Do you girls know the movie not that long ago called Heathers? You ever hear of that? Yeah. But anyway, they shot here in the park, and it was, I think they were here along this road, or also over in the group camp area. Campground where we have a grove of a little forest and all, but the scenes you see there, you can look it up online probably and find some YouTube or whatever on it, Heathers. I would guess that was, it might have been either the early in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I'm guessing, I'm just not sure. Look it up.
Which movie was that again?
It's called Heathers.
Heathers.
Yes, teenagers.
Wasn't that with like Winona Ryder and?
Yeah,
thinking
that
mid-90s.
generation,
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
could have been 90s.
Yeah. So the older generation here remembers the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
So the Three Stooges have been here, but they had some transition. This was later in their career. Curly, the so-called bald-headed member, had passed away, and they had a new fella. Kind of looked like him, not as tall and as out there and crazy, but they shot a film here, sort of had a medieval England period called Snow White and the Three Stooges. I have yet to look for it, but they shot along this road here. Just some natural history, for those you're not as familiar. Poison oak is one of those plants you want to stay away from. Some of you already know that if you get it, like me. As soon as I got here, I had no idea there was poison oak, the same, basic version as poison ivy that I grew up with. And within months of arriving here from New York or the East Coast, I wandered into some poison oak, and now I know it. It looks exactly like poison ivy.
These are free, let it be.
Exactly. Do you know the corollary though?
Anyway, have you ever heard the phrase, this is the catchphrase to help you remember, leaves of three, let them be.
If it's hairy,
1, 2,
it's a
3,
berry.
1, 2, 3. They always, as they grow, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2,
they have
3.
little
They always
fuzzy spikes.
like that. They're getting the dust of the vehicles going back here, so they're not as shiny as they should be. But that's poison oak. Stay away from it. It can fool you with some other plants, but the biggest lesson you want to learn when you go hiking is stay on a path. It's when you go off a path or a narrow path, that's when you invite trouble for yourself. Poison oak, ticks, rattlesnakes, insects in general. Another, the drought affects the yellow jackets, but yellow jackets are mean. They actually, I once was eating a hot dog. They are attracted to meat.
Right.
And I was eating a hot dog and not paying attention. There was a yellow jacket on the end of it, and I put him in my mouth.
Extra
He
protein.
just barely got a touch of me, and I, there goes all that hot dog, kind of out. But they nest in available holes in the ground, and so like this, you might see them likely because it's all bare dirt, and you might see buzzing around. But if you're in an area where you really can't see, as our old saying is if you can't see your feet, you shouldn't be there. Don't put your hands where you can't see them. So
Right.
remember
Very
that.
wicked looking.
There's an acronym called TRIP: ticks, rattlesnakes, insects, poison oak. And then don't trip. Have a safe trip.
It's a jar. It wasn't a jar last time.
So, unless you already know this, but this is the last remaining structure really from the 20th century Fox era. Other, the Blandings house doesn't qualify because that wasn't on their property. Does anybody want to guess what this is? By the way, the state parks created that there. I always joke that I guess they didn't have the key to the door, but I don't know what the. I actually have some pictures from our docent archive that shows park maintenance with like a jackhammer, and to this day I don't. But actually, there is a picture. I can't believe it must have been lined out a little bit more, but there was a body of a maintenance man, half in and half out. Must have been an awful skinny fellow, but anyway, solid concrete. A really heavy metal door. I mean, it doesn't have a lock on it, and there's those visitors who come and they're just, I'm gonna get this open, and all you can do is put your finger in there like this, but this is so heavy. This was their storage bunker for explosives. Yep. And they designed it such that the outer walls are very thick, but the flat roof up there is much thinner, so if anything accidentally got, set off in there, it would explode easily up above over there. So that was a part of the design. So it's a pretty formidable structure, and the state park evidently had no interest to take it down, and so here it is today. But I say about it being nasty in there, I've seen the door open, and I mean when you push it closed, it's like Herculean effort. Oh, by yourself, oh man, and probably to the hinges. But look at those hinges. But anyway, people are throwing trash in there all the time, so it's pretty funky in there. And does anybody know about hantavirus? Ever heard of that before? Hantavirus it can be a deadly disease, and it gets at the stage where it can affect humans. Is that you're in an enclosure has very little circulation, and it's coming from the feces of mice. And if you go in here poking around, and there has to be mice in there that have been in there and all, especially when the door's been left open. And you're walking through there, and you're kind of noticing kicking it up, and any dust that you kick up and it floats up to your nose, it can be fatal. I've been here a little over 25 years, and I've heard about it, not in this park, but it was somewhere else where that happened. So you wouldn't want to go under a house if there was a crawl space or anything that's windowless. It doesn't have the ventilation and all. And, you have to, better wear the best rated face mask you can get there. But hantavirus is not something. A lot of people don't know about it. That water tank that's up on the hill, people get inside of that. And we haven't heard anything comes back. You know, people ever give it. The mice can have free roam getting in there. So, a caution to the wind, as they say.
Hey,
So
Mike,
yeah.
in the bunker, I heard that there's still some high explosive ordnance in there. Would you like to invite one of our visitors to go check it out?
Yeah, go and bring it out for a show and tell.
Yeah.
So this is the traditional fork in the road. You ever hear this saying? So which way to go? You say, when you get to the fork in the road, take it. Okay? Remember that. So anyway, that, as you see from the sign, goes up the hill, and that takes you Century Lake, across that bridge to the MASH site. In fact, I think it's this sign here that appears in Heather's. One of those, I think, does. So we're going to bear to the left here. So we just passed it there, but this is where I first came upon all the setup with the crew and equipment, everything for the terminal list. The one I alluded to that doesn't debut until early July. Stars Chris Pratt, and they were all in here with equipment, and then they were filming down to Rockpool. I'll tell you about when we get down there. But every older person here probably knows the name Cher, pop icon. So in the 70s, she made a movie called Mask, M-A-S-K, not M-A-S-H. And her co-star was Sam Elliott, who's still making movies occasionally. He was at Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper and the remake of The Star is Born. He played the older brother of Bradley Cooper. So when I first started here, I decided I want to see what's in the cabinets and drawers in the visitor center. Found a whole lot of goodies in there, and I don't mean sweet goodies, but lots of history. And I actually found some various production records, papers in there, and one of them was from Mask. That they must have given the docents a copy or something, and oh, very good, you know. And I found some photographs, and it looked like right in here. And I live in Westlake Village, and I shop at a Gelson's occasionally right nearby. And I saw Sam Elliott in there. And he lives in Malibu, but they don't have, I guess, a Gelson's maybe down there, and they're more of a specialty store, some of you may know. Well, I hate to bother, you know, a celebrity, you know, totally away from the public, but I did as politely as I could, and I walked over to him, and he is doing what I often do these days, watching out for my health and what I ingest, always reading labels. And so he was standing there near the, you know, like where the meats and stuff are in the, you know, cold section, deli-like section. And so I walked over and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Elliott, I'm so sorry to disturb you in a private moment. I'm a volunteer at Malibu Creek State Park, and I just wanted to ask you a quick question to confirm for our history archive. Did you actually film scenes of Mass there?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Thank you, that's all. I'm sorry again to bother you," and I walked away. But anyway, in the world of interpreting history, I was taught early in my career, always have at least two sources to back up what you're going to tell, and everybody's going to take it for truth. So those two sources, plus finding photographs in here. In fact, it was in my PowerPoint last night. You remember you saw that one photo that was taken in here. So the road that goes up to the pad with the Crags Country Club is up over there. So I'll just, you know, take your opinion. I want to have most of you, all of you, buy in on it, whether we walk up there or not, because either way, you know, we'll end up going over to the visitor center and opening it up for exclusive visitation, all to ourselves, unless two people signed up and we don't know about it, or didn't sign up and show up. But anyway, so this is the way to the rock pool, and one of the most famous spots, as I said, infamous today. For filming as well. Okay, so right up here, so that's the big, huge rock that looms. If you're over the other side, we'll look at it from the visitor center. I mean, it's huge. And you only get perspective if you see somebody, you know, foolishly, I'll say that truthfully, just hand climbing the side of it without any, you know, protective ropes or whatever. And then you get to see the, you know, immensity of that big rock there. So during the Christ Country Club ownership, primarily when they built the house over there, which was probably end of the 20s, very early 30s, the visitor center today, they built a suspension bridge for walking across to the other side, and it went from here over those rocks over there. And I'm trying to remember if you see it in the, I think you might see it in the video clips, I can't recall for sure. But when you're in the right spot, you see there's an anchor bolt somewhere, but I don't see it right quickly here. I forgot where it is, but just an old anchor that was drilled in and still sitting there. Watch for, you know, we're pretty safe. I want you to be able to look up toward the big rock wall there. We spoke briefly about the sequels to the original Planet of the Apes. This is beneath the Planet of the Apes from 1970, so I think it's the second one that was shot out here. So they shot a scene right at the base of what's now known as Ape Wall in the movie, if you will, from this scene actually. And so you have the pecking order. And I haven't never seen the reboot to see if they've had that same division of species within the simian world there. So you have the, you know, what you see is the gorillas on horseback. The kind of the working class people are more like chimpanzees, if you will. And then the kind of Supreme Court superior leaders were orangutan looking, if you will. So I always like calling the Supreme Court, but the hierarchy, the leaders, they were all seated up there, and then all their people are out in the, here looking up them. You'll see this in the video clip. It's a really great transition there. So there it is. Whoops. Again, this was not a great resolution of a photo, but it's good enough. And you see, they took the suspension bridge and they kind of made it, you know, wrapped with vegetation there to make it more fitting for the background scene. I don't think they used it in the movie, but we could go through each summer Planet of the Apes and go through them one by one until they don't do the ranch anymore. But, that's right here. So the Christ Country Club, you can't see it from here, but at the back of that huge rock is the dirt pad that they leveled off, cleaned off to build their clubhouse. And when we go in the visitor center, as soon as you walk in the door, right on your right wall there, you see a display about the Christ Country Club, and there's some photographs there you can see and read about. Any questions? Everybody, how? And it was used in a handful of movies. It was there. Work it into the script. Jimmy Stewart made a movie in '59 called The FBI Story, and he went to South America tracking down some people, and he walked across the bridge. The suspension bridge. Hopefully I got them all. So, anybody remember the two silent actors, well, in this case the actress. There's an interesting fact that, you know, it's commonly split. You call the male the man, an actor, and the female is the actress. But when I watched the which award is, I think it's the SAG award, the Screen Actors Guild. So this is all their, you know, union. It's not like going Critics' Choice or other ones, the Academy Awards. You know, everybody is there supporting one another. They do it at the other award ceremony, but this is their organization. It's been around for a long time. And they always do this bit at the beginning of the award show where the camera goes around predetermined and stops on a different actor or actress. And when they stand up, you know, it's the first time I realized this. A female actor will stand up and say, "I'm Meryl Streep, I'm an actor," or, you know, so on and so forth. Are you familiar with that, Kerry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, here is the actor / actress, Mary Pickford, down at the rock pool. Now that rock is still here, but it's never been, I've seen it this much out of the water. So what you'll see is probably just a little bit of it. And I also want you to look, you look here closely, I do this close up. Can you see this kind of outline right there? Looks like a heart. I call it an angel's wings. Right there, you see that cut out? You see that all right? Yeah. You see that there? See that outline? I'm doing this upside down. Yeah, there it is right there. So that's still there today. So we'll look for that when we get over there. 1919. Okay, this is Dr. Doolittle. That's Rex Harrison there, down here at the rock pool. And I alluded to the wild animals. Well, I read this is the only fake animal, the mechanical crocodile there, down the rock pool. And you see the more, I'll call it tropical vegetation that's there in the scene. And another interesting story I read about the movie is that of all these wild animals I alluded to, you know, rhinoceros and giraffe are one. I think there's an ostrich in it. Can't, you know, since I never watched the movie beginning to end, I don't know beyond that. But I read a story that all of the majority of those live animals, pretty much all except one, which supposedly was in England, you know, it was just, you know, not drugged up in any way. It was just following its paces, and there was always a trainer on set. But they had to give some kind of, you know, drug to the squirrel, because the squirrel could be a little bit nasty and bite you. So that's a story I read about that. But yeah, that's right down here at the rock pool, and that cutout here is a little too shaded. But if you, you know, when we get down there a little closer, you'll clearly see these big boulders on the other side. I can see somebody on one of them. And it's down there that this fella, from the filming of the Terminal List, he started over here and he just climbed from one big rock to another, and he was dressed in not a bathing suit or anything, but, and I don't know if this is true, you know, until I see. I'm glad it's only on Amazon, because I do get Amazon Prime, so I'll be able to check it out. I was told July 2nd it debuts. So I never saw Chris Pratt down here, but not knowing what he looks like in the show, I was on the internet just a couple of days ago looking around, and I found this photo of him, nice color photo kind of from here up, and he had a dark ball cap on, and he had a beard, and that's what that guy was wearing that was, you know, climbing around the rocks. So I'm very curious to see if that, you know, that was a stunt man, and whatever. Not to say that Chris Pratt couldn't do that. I guess he's the one that's in the more modern Jurassic Park movies. Yeah. Is that true? Yeah. But anyway, that's the closest I know of trying to make the connection. I'll see when I watch the show over there. And I think I have a couple others. So since we probably passed, I'm going up to the top of that big rock there. This is now a World War II out on a Pacific island where there was lots of volcanic rock. And the lead actor is right over here. That's Robert Wagner, who we've determined as the leading man for Fox was out here more than any other leading actor or actress. Robert Wagner. He's still with us today in his 80s. So the Pacific Island, World War II, and they're up on the top of that big rock. And then last but not least, the astronauts from Planet of the Apes arrive at the rock pool. First time out of the desert, you see them in a more vegetative environment. And a beautiful fake waterfall was cascading over the rocks over there. And you'll see this in the film clip. I love it. Charlton Heston dives in, and when he comes up, as soon as his head comes up out of the water, he just like moans and yells, "Ah!" And I'm like, oh, this feels so good. So you'll catch that there. So I'm going to put these away, and then we'll carefully walk down there and you know, spread out wherever, find a good spot to stand and look for some of these rocks. It's believed there could be a spring. I've never heard that before, but you know, this water never goes away. And in the early days when they built that dam and all, they actually did a core tunnel through the rocks somewhere. I mean, it's not like the most welcome place to around. I don't know if it's off or whatever. Probably just about as tall as anything else. You know, it's a good question. I've never gone in it. I mean, that person's standing up out there, but you know, these guys, you know, they're brave, and I guess they believe that. Stupid. Yeah, right, brave, stupid, whatever. But this is all the illegal. If the ranger came down here, you could cite every single one of them for jumping. But I was here for the man who drowned, and I was doing CPR on him with a couple other people out on that little island. But he had gone underwater and disappeared for up to 5 minutes, and nobody could find him. It's so dark and murky in there, and the kids, young boys were diving, and finally one boy found him and brought him up. And I was notified at the visitor center. Well, what's great is that, even though the man never made it, a doctor, female doctor, and her son, a lifeguard, were the ones working on him. And I went over and spared the mouth part. Yeah, we just do that. There is a local official body that I can't remember who they are, but they do water testing in other days, and I know they came to one of our trainings to report. It depends on the time of the year. It's okay, and other times, borderline. I mean, I wouldn't go in there. You see, there's another person that's just like taking a chance. I mean, they're close to the water, but I mean, that's a common, challenge or whatever you want to call it, to go all the way around there. But as somebody was talking to me, when you start going up, it's a little bit easier compared to when you want to go backwards. That is very dangerous. To go backwards like this, down. So when you're I think we've got. I know that one man, he left early there, so I think we're all here. So you don't have to agree to this, some of you don't want, but we'd love to have for our archives a group picture at some point with those of you who came out and me. That's all right with you. Don't want to be in it? That's okay. You can step away. So